Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to be moving on into this week, which is Special Selection Week, and I think this is the second to last Special Selection Week we'll have. After the first week of May, when we do this again, we should be all caught up, and the first week of a month, I have new plans for that. I think it's going to be pretty good. It's going to help introduce some variety to the channel in the same way that checking out these special selections did, but with a little bit more control. Maybe still sticking with a theme, but lots of variety. Today's special selection comes at us from Dustin Denton. Says had some last minute indecision. 4 songs from the same band were on their mind. Crazy song, long song, popular song, and a favorite chorus of theirs. So they went with what I typically do, going with a dice roll, random number generator. And we're going to be getting Counterattack by the Sesame Sized Bodies by Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I don't even know what to begin to think of that. That is just, I don't know. Fear and Loathing, I mean, obviously, that's some Hunter S. Thompson stuff. So, the band name itself is already giving me some trippy vibes. And then we have Counterattack by the Sesame Sized Bodies. I don't know, let's get into this one. Lots of drive and energy here, but where are we going? Lots of texture work here. I like the way that the synthesizer and the vocals are playing off of each other's melody lines there. Yeah, really interesting pocket of counterpoint going on amidst the chaos that's the rest of this track. Yeah. Just some dramatic. Yes. Whiplash right there. Atmospheric whiplash. Yeah, really cool rhythmic synergy there. Yeah, so we've moved to 6/8. The whole song's been 4/4, and we get that tiny pocket of 6/8. Bit of call and response. I mean, what aren't these guys throwing in here? Yeah, so that was a wild 3.5 minutes or whatever at 3:39. Um, just uh, is it safe to say that they're the? I'm going to assume. I don't want to. I don't want to. They remind me a lot of Dillinger Escape Plan, though, right? All over the place, wild stuff. You could even. No, I was gonna say you could even say like Between the Buried and Me, but I think that this leans a lot more closer towards hardcore punk pop rock kind of stuff, um, rather than some of the metal ideas that uh, Between the Buried tend to incorporate. Um, so for a second there at the beginning, in the first verse, I was actually really curious if this was Keo's like other project, and he is. I know him as the lead singer of Deer and Gray. We've checked out Vinshuka before. That was like way early, first couple of months for the channel. And yeah, the lead singer gave me a strong vibe of his in the opening harshes. Now, as we listen to more of the song, he went into so many different other styles, and Keo also does it. He has a lot of different vocal techniques as well. But the techniques being exhibited here, not anything that I've heard Keo do before. So I'm going to assume it's not now that I've finished through the whole song, but it is kind of weird how it was almost 100% spot on there at the beginning. Um, so this band deals in a lot of extremes. And we've talked about bands that jump around genres before, and it's really interesting. I think the most difficult part, I've mentioned this before, is really creating a cohesive experience about all these, disparate parts. They're all so wildly different, and yet you still need to have the listener, the audience, walk away from the song feeling like they've heard a singular idea rather than just a bunch of ideas duct taped together that don't flow. And I don't know how that's done. um, I kind of want to do a whole week of genre hopping bands like this or songs like this, just so I can kind of get in that mindset for like 5 days straight and see if I can't pick that apart. Because if I was put in this position and said, you need to make a song that jumps between all these different ideas and it needs to transition well, and at the end of the song, it needs to feel like a single identity rather than a bunch of separate ideas, I'm not sure I could do that. And I think there's really two things to that. And one is just practice. Everything is practice, right? I've never written anything like this, which is why it seems daunting to me. And two, I think there's a very key part of the puzzle that I'm just missing here. There has to be some element that you can easily do because, in the individual aspects, we would talk about how do we join two ideas, and that's your transition. Um, and a lot of the transitions in here are very sharp. We're in this moment here, and the next bar we're in the next, and there's not really much of a transition there, although there is some really key drum work, mostly cymbal work going on, that kind of helps notify a transition. And I think that helps a little bit, but I can't say the transitions are doing a good job of smoothly tying everything together because most of the transitions are rather harsh as well. So there's got to be something underlying that really makes everything feel whole. And some of it might be repetition. There might be some hidden ideas of motif throughout here that we subconsciously pick up on that I didn't specifically notice. It could be even something as simple as retaining chord progressions or chord shapes and reusing them throughout. I'm not really sure, but it continues to surprise me when I hear stuff like this, and it's wild, it's eclectic, but it still feels unified. So, like I've mentioned many times before with bands like this, songs like this, it baffles me. It intrigues me how this is done because it is just so far outside of my comfort writing, my comfort zone, that I just don't know how it's possible. um, but uh, they jump between two core ideas, I would say. We do touch on a couple of little tangents here and there. Um, like we do have like a death metal-y kind of concept that popped up once for a few bars. We had that uh, calmer section that when we switched to 6/8, was that acoustic guitars or maybe just clean electrics? I'm not really sure. Um, but the whole thing just kind of calmed down for a few bars. But I'd say that those were the fringes compared to the hardcore, which is the part that reminds me of stuff like Dillinger and Protest the Hero. The really harsh rhythmic sections with the strong presence of growls and fries. And then we have almost like a pop rock, pop punk idea. Um, we have the clean vocals that are higher up in the register. We have some really, well, they're catchy. There's a catchy melody there. We have some higher up synths that kind of work alongside that. Our guitars are more chordal focused rather than rhythmic or textural. And we get these really nice punk drum rhythms behind it that emphasize varying relationships between the bass kick and the snare, where you get like the ga 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 ga, and you get these really interesting bits. The snare is always accenting your downbeats, but the bass and the bass kicks in their relationship to the snare, and how they might be a grace note into it or just some fast notes out of the snare, create this driving momentum that has a bit of like a chugginess to it. Just very, very cliche punk right there. And yeah, that whole section, the I guess you would say that's the chorus, is just it's in such stark contrast. But they are kind of two sides of the same coin, and maybe this is what's holding everything together. This might be a bit of the glue. Um, in that we almost have a pop punk and a hardcore punk. Hardcore came from punk, right? So if punk's the middle ground and pop leans more towards melody and hardcore, sorry, leads more towards um, rhythmic elements, all we're doing is moving the needle between the two extremes while still retaining that core middle. It's still a punk track. We're just looking at different aspects of how punk evolved and bouncing between them. Now, like I said, we still have those fringe moments when we introduce the clean guitars, when we go into the real harsh death metal stuff. I don't know if it's really death metal, but that's where I'm going with it. When the dude's growls just came like real low, and we entered some really heavy, down-tuned open strings, just really getting a nice heavy weight to it. And those fringes, I'm not really sure how they tie in, other than the fact that they don't stand. It's okay. So this might be where I'm going with this. I've mentioned before that when jazz soloists want to add some color to their solo, they'll steal some notes that are outside of the chord that they are currently in. Maybe it's the chord that's coming up and they're taking some leading tones to help move into it, to help with the transition. Maybe they're just taking it from a similarly adjacent chord, um, and just kind of adding a little flourish to it. And I've mentioned that when you really go for these notes that could clash with some of the stuff that's going to be in your sound floor, the faster you get away from them, the better. The longer you hold on to them, the more that the ear can really hone in and say, hey, that's creating some dissonance. That doesn't sound too good. Assuming we're talking about jazz, and majority of jazz is about sounding harmonious. Um, it's not really about, I mean, you can build tension in jazz, but a lot of what people think of when they think of jazz, your swings, your big bands, you're really going for some more harmonious stuff there. Um, so you can use these notes that are clashing a bit as color, but you need to get off of them quickly. The longer that you hang on to them, the more the audience can listen, they're out of place. And maybe that's what's going on here. These fringe elements are only 8 bars tops, maybe. Some of them are only 4 bars. Um, and they're coming and going so fast that when you think back on the song, you remember the verse and the chorus, not so much the fringe. And I've already tied together the verse and the chorus. So it might just be about prominence. Do we have a thing called prominence bias in psychology, where you remember the things that happen most often and not the things that were rarer? I don't know if that's a thing. If there's a term for that, though, this is probably that. We hear the chorus and the verse so much that when we think about the song, that's what we think of. And even me, the longer I get away from this song, I mean, we're at 11 minutes of talking now. Um, the longer I get away from having heard the song, the things I remember most are those two elements. Really trying to think about the fringe elements, I can really only think about the two, and that's the death metal and the clean part. And I can only really remember them because I've mentioned them. I can't actually remember what they sound like at this point. Um, I just kind of remember that they're there. So that might have something to do with how these guys tie their songs together. They have two seemingly opposite but similar ideas under the surface that they use in a majority of the time, and all the other fleeting moments are used to create the intention, the perception of chaos, of jumping around to a bajillion different genres. But at the end of the day, the taste in your mouth is going to be the two ideas that were featured most prominently, and they are going to work well together because under the surface, they do have some ties. So I don't know if that's actually what's going on here, but that gives me some food for thought and really makes me want to take another shot at writing something a bit chaotic like this and kind of incorporating those ideas and seeing where that takes me. I have never put something together like this that jumps around and made a final draft that I was happy with. Most of the time, it usually sits in a folder of incompleted works because I could not tie it all together. And I wonder if this might be that missing piece of the puzzle I was talking about. Um, but yeah, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, this was fantastic. Some very cool stuff on display here, and of course, everybody just has mad chops to basically jump around through all this stuff. Not only just with some of the tempo changes, everything's done, very sharply. This bar and then this bar, and that's your transition, is literally the line separating the bars. We have tempo changes that are done immediately. We have genre swaps, and everybody can just play all sorts of different concepts and ideas. I would not mind seeing more of this band on the channel. Check out a little bit more what they're doing. So Dustin, that was a good choice. Definitely intrigued by these guys, and I'm glad that they kind of gave me a new perspective on this style of writing, because like I've been talking about, I have difficulties understanding how it works, but mentally I know it works, and I kind of came upon some nuggets of information here that might help in the future. But those are my thoughts on Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Counterattack by the Sesame-sized bodies. This is where you guys come in, hit me up in the comments, let me know what you thought, if you enjoyed it or not, if you think anything that I have said makes any sense, or maybe you've written music like this, or maybe there's interviews with people who have written music like this, a little bit of insight into their writing process and how they end up making things cohesive. Anything like that, please drop it in the comments. I am interested to learn about some of these rock and metal concepts just as much as some of you are interested in learning about some of the music theory that I see and hear in these songs. It's a big learning process for everybody. We're all students, right? So yeah, really cool stuff. There's a description box above the comment section if you'd like to check out the Discord community, chat with some other people, or hit up the Patreon and support the channel. Another way to support the channel, like, subscribe, ring the bell. All three of those things help out the channel immensely. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, unlike today, which is certainly coming out late. And that will be another special selection. Yeah, because we got special selection all week. My brain is slightly frail today, I guess. I'm having a hard time concentrating on this outro. What comes next? Until next time, remember to be critical and not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.